I would first like to start off this video by by apologizing for the events that happened at the end of the last episode. I was interrupted by my brother, and it was time to eat pizza. So, yeah, I was interrupted very abruptly, but I was planning on ending sometime soon anyway, so it doesn't matter, and we should finish it up in this video. So here we go. All around the room lay her friends, sleeping and snoring soundly, or delicately in the case of Rarity. Pinkie Pie lay on her back over Applejack's flank, Rarity was asleep in a chair, her mane in a tangle, and Spike was curled up halfway under the same chair. Fluttershy slept at the foot end of Twilight's bed, one wing draped over Twilight's flank and back legs. But no Rainbow Dash. What had happened anyway? Twilight made a second attempt at getting out of bed, but stopped when using her front and left hoof rewarded her with a flare of pain. She brought it out from under the covers and saw to a great surprise that it was in a cast, pulling back the covers with her other hoof. She saw that bandages covered much of her body. It didn't hurt as much as her hoof, though. Had it been the fall? The creature? She had to admit she didn't remember much after that. Well, except for talking to Rainbow Dash. She remembered each and every word they'd traded before she presumably passed out. She remembered them perhaps too well. Twilight was unable to keep herself from replaying the scene over and over in her mind. Had she blown it? Had she destroyed any chance of them being more than friends? Had she ruined their friendship too? Twilight felt tears come to her unbidden again. She hated this part. She sat there sniffling like a foal, not wanting to wake any of her friends. She didn't know exactly why she didn't want to wake them, but she did know why she was crying. There was one thing she'd realized as she made her way through the forest yesterday. A single thought that began as a flickering flame, but rapidly grew into a bonfire and spread her along. She loved Rainbow Dash. No, she didn't know the specifics, and yes, the analytical part of her mind hated that, but she also loved the wild rush and the freedom of just feeling this way. And she loved the thought of telling Rainbow Dash. Apparently, she'd been too late. She hadn't considered the option that Rainbow Dash wouldn't feel the same anymore after being rejected. Twilight didn't know how long she sat there, trying not to feel alone, despite being surrounded by almost all her friends. Oh, I hate that feeling. Sometimes I have those days where I'm just sitting there and like all my friends are there and I'm just... Oh, I hate that. But it felt like an eternity. Pinkie Pie muttered something about oatmeal in her sleep. Fluttershy stretched her wing to cover Twilight a bit more. Spike actually had the hiccups in his sleep, which would have been hilarious under any other circumstance. Twilight soon found herself dozing off in short intervals, tired of being tired. She woke up once to see Nurse Redheart exiting the room. After falling asleep again, she woke up a second time, expecting the same kind-hearted Earth Pony, but instead, Rainbow Dash stepped inside with an odd yellow flower in her mouth and rings under her eyes betraying a lack of sleep. Hi, Rainbow Dash muttered. Her resolve faded when she saw Twilight was awake. She had wanted to be there when she woke up, for some stupid reason. She put the flower down on the bed, near Fluttershy, and frowned as she worked her tongue around her mouth. Princess Luna had neglected to mention they were, in fact, also exceptionally foul-tasting flowers. Oh yeah, Luna! I was trying to work out what she meant, but Luna planted those, well, she didn't plant them. She said that there was one type of flower that only grows there. I wonder what effect these flowers might have. Dash hadn't been able to stop thinking about the Alicorn Princess's words since they'd parted, expecting a brief spell of panic, of course, when she'd seen Twilight. That thought snapped her back to reality quick enough, and she looked up at the unicorn, awkwardness forgotten momentarily. Twilight had barely moved, so Rainbow Dash scooted over to sit on her haunches by the bed. You feeling okay? Twilight appeared thoughtful for a second, as if she hadn't even considered that, then nodded. I'm a little stiff, but otherwise fine. I just don't know what happened. Rainbow Dash could only nod at that. The unicorn had seemed almost delirious before she passed out. She swallowed as a stab of fear lanced through her. Did this mean she didn't remember anything? Rainbow? I'm gonna be okay, right? Twilight asked, apparently distressed at the Pegasus's expression. Rainbow Dash quickly regained her composure and gave her a great fake grin. Oh yeah! You hurt one of your legs real bad, but the nurse said you'll be fine. You don't remember how you got wounded? Twilight did remember. She winced and looked down at the bed, waiting to change the subject. Yeah, I do. Neither pony seemed to want to speak up. Twilight looked at absolutely nothing in particular, and Rainbow Dash looked at Twilight, staring and bearing a slight frown, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Pinkie Pie rolled over in her sleep, causing Applejack to shift a bit. Twilight Sparkle and Rainbow Dash both tensed up, then shared a quiet little smile. I carried you, Dash began. I think I hurt, Twilight started to say. They both shut up at the same time, Twilight motioning for the Pegasus to go ahead first. It's how you got back. I carried you after you found me. She wanted to say more, but she feared that Twilight had forgotten what she had said. Frankly, Rainbow Dash didn't care so much about that stupid feather anyways. She just figured Twilight might, and she apparently had. And then she'd forgotten? Dash searched Twilight's eyes for any hint of recognition, but the latter of the two just looked lost. You were pretty beat up. It was kind of cool, actually. What the hell were you doing anyway? Rainbow Dash felt her face heat up a little. It wasn't cool at all, actually, when she thought about it. You could have gotten hurt worse. You could have gotten killed. You idiot! I'm sorry. Twilight's voice was just a whisper, and very Fluttershy sounding. At first, but she grew more intense with each word. I'm sorry. I almost lost it. I'm sorry I got hurt, but, you know, I'm not sorry I came looking for you. And something took your feather. Some monster. I don't even know. And I heard it. I don't know what happened to it. And then I messed up the feather, and I don't know where it is. I thought I'd lost you. She stopped herself and sobbed. Rainbow Dash was still looking at her, her jaw squared. Annoying as though she had been, Luna's words had made some sense. What she'd since realized, though, was that she didn't have to choose. The Wonderbolts had always been her goal, but it didn't have to be a straight path there, did it? It wasn't like Twilight's books were useless. She was surprised when she realized that when she feared she might lose Twilight as a friend, she also regretted the thought of losing their study nights. Rainbow Dash? Twilight's voice was faint and pitiful, and Rainbow barely heard her. How could she live with herself if she shied away from the challenge? Much less a challenge that she really did want. How was this different from a sonic rainboom? Twilight had once told her some stuff about having your cake and eating it. Pinkie Pie had giggled when Rainbow Dash had repeated the words, asking why you couldn't simply bake 2 cakes. Not that the question even mattered. She knew that she wanted. She didn't have to answer which one she'd choose if she had to choose, because she chose not to choose. Her head spun a little at the thought, but it worked. Rainbow Dash slowly got up and turned to the nightstand next to Twilight Sparkle's head, fully aware that Twilight was watching her all the way. Twilight was trying to be quiet and hold back a sniffle. Where the hey... Oh. It fell on the floor. Wind must have caught it. Rainbow Dash muttered as she leaned under the bed and picked up the displaced feather with her mouth. Without hesitation, she stuck it in Twilight's mane. Oh. The unicorn was too surprised to do anything but stare. Stop crying, Rainbow said, though she smiled. Her face felt like it was on fire. You're making me feel bad. Twilight swallowed and said nothing. Rainbow Dash stifled an urge of anger and doubt. I never gave it to you. You know, like I should have. Like I meant to. Now I have. Unless you don't want it. The last few words almost sounded angry, and Rainbow Dash felt a little ashamed. She trained her eyes on bed sheets and tried to shut up the nagging fears. She had all of 2 seconds with those fears before Twilight leaned over and planted a kiss on the tip of her muzzle that seemed to burn them away. The unicorn's violet eyes were still glistening with tears and her cheeks were burning, but Twilight met her gaze steadily. Rainbow Dash's heart felt like it was going to explode. Sonic rainbooms were nothing. Thank you, Twilight said, simply. Before she could say any more, though, they were interrupted by a muffled squeak. Fluttershy raised her head up from the bed an inch and looked like she wanted to melt and seep through the floor, which was probably not too far away from the truth. Oh my goodness, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just, I've been awake for a little while and oh my goodness, I didn't mean to spy. I just woke up and I didn't want to interrupt you. And now I haven't. I'm so sorry. I'm just gonna, I'm sorry. Please don't hate me. The yellow Pegasus fretted urgently yet quietly. I think it's okay, Fluttershy, Twilight Sparkle whispered, glancing over at Rainbow Dash hopefully and wiping her eyes with a good hoof. Yeah, it's cool, Rainbow Dash agreed, taking Twilight's hoof in her own and leaning back in to kiss her. Oh my goodness, was all Fluttershy could manage. When their lips parted, the silence that settled was comfortable and fuzzy in all the right ways, for at least 2 out of the 3 ponies. But there was one thing that Rainbow Dash hadn't quite figured out. Twilight? How did you know where I was? Twilight hesitated a bit, looking sheepish. I didn't, really. I thought you would be where we found the elements, you know, reflecting on... Oh! Now it makes sense. Like when they were talking about the castle, I had no idea what they were talking about. I was like, what? But then, now that... Oh, because it's the part where they cross a bridge and Rainbow Dash realized that she wanted her friends more than she wanted to join the Shadow Bolts. Which actually ties into the story because in this one, she chose a relationship over the Wonder Bolts and it makes so much sense! Oh, everything makes sense now. Love that. Love it when I figure everything out. Rainbow Dash blinked and raised a brow. Dork. It's what I'd have done, I think, Twilight said a little defensively. But I guess I should have known better. I'm glad you didn't know any better then, I guess. Rainbow Dash shook her head. What were you doing at the bridge anyway, then? The question caught the Pegasus a little off guard. It's where I first realized... Her voice petered out. She couldn't complete the sentence, but Twilight caught on rapidly in a rare moment of understanding. Twilight blushed. Oh, I see. And the flower? Rainbow Dash had forgotten about that, glancing down at the single, forgotten flower. Not much of a romantic. She shrugged and said the truth. I think that one was more from me to myself. Twilight gave her an odd look at that, but did not protest. Twi! You're awake! Applejack's exclamation roused the other ponies, who began shaking off sleep in various ways, but Twilight and Rainbow Dash kept holding hooves. See, they don't care. It's not a secret anymore. Everybody's so happy and together and so cool. It's gonna be A-okay. Princess Celestia, matriarch and ruler of Equestria, was exactly where Luna had expected her to be at this time of the day. She always took a few minutes off around high noon to stand at the highest balcony of the castle. As to why, Luna was not quite sure. It could be because of the effect it had on its subjects to see when the Sun Princess in her full splendor. It could be because of a narcissistic streak compelled her to gloat when her power was at its highest. Luna mentally berated herself for thinking that even for just 1 second. It felt like a cloying film of shame stuck to her coat for just having had that thought. Celestia's eyes were not turned skywards, but to the horizon. She was watching her subjects. Their subjects, she reminded herself, and thinking about them all. My dear sister, welcome back. Where were you last night? Celestia said, and Luna bathed in the warmth of her presence, refusing to brood and end up in a mood again. Hello, Tia, she replied as she trotted up to stand by her sister's side. And I think you know the answer to that. Do I? Celestia asked, gracing Luna with a smile. She almost always smiled, of course, but Luna knew what the smile had told her. It said, of course I know. But humor me. Luna huffed and glanced towards the distant Ponyville. How much of this did you orchestrate, sister? Luna asked, sincerely. At this, the omnipresent smile faded, bit by bit, until Celestia looked thoughtful. Luna instantly regretted not simply playing along. You don't give ponies enough credit, dear. I've done nothing except request that Spike stay to help me for a little longer than I had originally intended, was Celestia's reply. Luna felt a little slighted at that, but she felt the pull to get answers all the same. Acting by proxy and pulling strings doesn't leave your hooves clean, Luna ventured, quickly adding, not that anything wrong has been done. Celestia remained looking disappointed. Her eyes seemed to bore straight through Luna, who began to fidget a little. Who did I manipulate? I hate this word. Celestia queried, gently. Me, Luna answered. Celestia frowned at that. It wasn't a menacing frown. Luna had seen Celestia angry, and that was mercifully rare sight. But this was not one of those frowns. It made her hackles rise, or made her want to hide from the fury of the sun. It was far, far worse. Celestia seemed truly saddened. What I told you was that Twilight Sparkle had written to me about Rainbow Dash, and nothing more. Do you still fear me so? Do you still hate yourself so much that you can't accept that it was you who heard the plea for help in the middle of the night? At the height of your power and in your domain? Can you not take credit for what was a good deed? Luna's head dropped, and instantly she felt the warmth of her sister's body as Celestia leaned slightly on her. You did a good thing, Celestia whispered, even though I think you may do well to never let Rainbow Dash know you threatened Twilight so. She was never in any real danger. I had full control, Luna murmured and leaned back on her sister. I know, Celestia assured her, draping a wing protectively over her. The sounds of Pinkie Pie's party were muted, reduced to dull throbs of the bass through the floor of Twilight Sparkle's bedroom. Naturally, Pinkie had wanted to throw a party to celebrate her being released from the hospital. Almost equally naturally, it had been a surprise party. How that pony managed to secretly hide close to 100 ponies inside her library for even a second, Twilight would never know. She turned the page of her book with the hoof, just as there was a creak from the door to her room. I'll be down in just a second. I need to finish this chapter, Twilight said. After a moment, a gust started blowing in her room, messing up her mane and turning the pages of her book willy-nilly. Twilight rolled onto her back and stared up at Rainbow Dash, who was hovering over her bed, grinning broadly. Hey-ya! Rainbow Dash giggled. Hi. I suppose I really should rejoin the party downstairs, shouldn't I? Guest of honor and everything, Twilight admitted with a theatrical huff. You know Pinkie Pie, she'd keep it alive even if she was the only pony there. Rainbow Dash paused for a brief second, her eyes glazing over as if reliving a terrible memory before she caught herself. Almost anyway. I don't think you'll be missed too much. She concluded. Twilight nodded gratefully at that, very eager to agree or just believe. She lay very still, looking up at the rainbow-maned Pegasus who did lazy laps around Twilight's room. When she started thinking, it was hard to stop, but she liked to think she felt secure enough in herself to broach a subject that had been nagging her. Hey, Rainbow? Why me? Rainbow Dash had apparently either been thinking about that just recently, or she was just quicker than the uptake about things in Twilight. But either way, she didn't ask for an explanation or a clarification. 'Cause you're cool. Twilight couldn't stop herself from laughing at that, and once she started laughing, she found it hard to stop. Rainbow Dash even joined her in for a little while, but she sobered up quickly and looked unusually pensive. Rainbow, I'm everything but cool, Twilight said with a giggle. I'm probably the least cool pony in Ponyville. Says who? Rainbow challenged, crossing her forelegs. Every pony, pretty much. Twilight shook her head, wondering where this was going. Well, I don't. And I'm pretty much the coolest pony in Ponyville, so... Rainbow Dash said with a note of triumph. Twilight blushed. Seriously, though, the unicorn implored, now almost coming to regret asking. Seriously, Dash said hotly. Do you have to think so much all the time? Shut that big brain of yours off for a second and just feel instead of thinking. What do you feel when you do that? You know what I feel? I feel that I love you. Oh, and that I want to be with you. And I do think you're cool. And you're smart, which is cool, so that's twice as cool. When she finished, Rainbow Dash was a little flushed. If you say so. And I think you're right, Twilight admitted, muffling those words over and extending a hoof towards the airborne Pegasus. Rainbow Dash landed on the edge of the bed, but didn't come any closer. She muttered something inaudible that Twilight couldn't hear, her ears flat backwards. Sorry, what was that? Twilight asked, though she had an idea of what she'd just said. Rainbow Dash glared at Twilight and repeated herself, still too low for the unicorn to hear. Twilight failed to hold back a smile. You're gonna have to speak up, Rainbow. 2 minutes later, the casualties were up to 3 pillows, a set of bedsheets, and entirely too many books. But Twilight Sparkle couldn't make herself mind all too much. Presently, she lay pinned under Rainbow Dash, who was considerably less worn out from the ordeal than she was herself. Now, the Pegasus pony looked flushed all the same, and her expression was urgent. What? What? I don't understand. Like, they have, like, did they, you know, like, play fight, or did they have a rousing time? What? Like, what? I don't understand. Tell me, Dash snarled, finally voicing the question. Her snout was mere inches from Twilight, and there was a trace of real need, if not anger, in her tone. Twilight was still trying to catch her breath, and couldn't answer it even if she wanted to. Just tell me! Just, please, tell me! I have to know! Why me? Why did you say yes? Twilight's expression slackened as she thought she heard a note of real hurt in Rainbow Dash's voice. Figuring the game had gone on long enough, she nodded. Rainbow Dash remained still atop Twilight, staring down at her. Oh. Well, I guess Twilight just got pissed and, you know. Yeah. But how did Rainbow Dash get on top of Twilight then? I don't get it. I don't get it. Wait. So now Dash is asking Twilight. This is confusing. Because, Twilight took another breath. Because I love you. The desperation painted on Rainbow Dash's face grew. Twilight leaned forward and nibbled on Rainbow Dash's lips briefly before drawing her into a kiss. It certainly did nothing to alleviate her shortness of breath, but it bought her a few seconds. Because you give me strength. Because you inspire ponies. Me included. Because you have a good heart. Take your pick, Twilight said, not even sure where the words came from, but she knew she meant them. But most of all, I love you just because I do. And that's not something I would have thought possible a month ago. Twilight finished. They stared into each other's eyes for a few seconds, both of them breathing heavily now. And because I'm cool, right? Rainbow Dash said, grinning. And because you're cool, Twilight Sparkle laughed. The end. That ending was a little confusing for me. I didn't quite understand it, but I assume they had some rousing pony time, and then Rainbow Dash asked Twilight to tell her what she meant, so, I mean, oh, yeah. Very lovely, very lovely, very lovely indeed.